I would love to be standing up here telling you that back in the day I had a gold medal in curling or something, and you can too. But sadly, my story is all a bit miserable, really. It's basically a story about fight. When I was asked to speak at this event sometime last year, I did say, really, does anybody want to hear a story about that? There is hundreds of these stories that have been out there before, and I'm not sure it needs to be told. I'm basically just a teacher who has had a fight with breast cancer, and so far I seem to have won the battle. And I know, of course, I am not alone here. Breast cancer is the #1 disease affecting women in the UK with cancer, and I know you've probably all know somebody who's been affected by it already. But when I was the age that many of you are now, the people that I knew in the sixth form who got cancer generally died. And that sadly might be an experience that some of you have already had. So I want to tell you my story and talk to you a little bit about the hand that fate plays, about the fear of the disease, about the support of friends and family, but most of all, the importance of having a big bit of fight. When I think about the strength I had to fight the disease, it surprises me a little bit because this wasn't my first knock to adult life. Back in 2003, I was happily married to my husband Dan, and we had a beautiful 1-year-old baby girl. We were absolutely over the moon to get pregnant really quickly with our second, but 36 weeks into the pregnancy, I had a stillbirth, and Holly Rebecca was born sleeping. But this, of course, wasn't a fight I could have. This was fate. This was something that was going to happen, and there was nothing I could do about it. At 30 years old, I had a 1 in 3,600 chance of the pregnancy ending that way, and little Holly was just that unfortunate one. And it was incredibly hard to get over and just felt very unfair. It was by far the hardest thing I've ever had to go through in my life. To go into hospital pregnant and come out without a baby is completely shattering, and it took a really long time to get over that. And we found out later that actually Holly had an extra chromosome 21. She had Down syndrome, and like many other Down syndrome babies, just didn't make it through the pregnancy. So it was a really hard and difficult time, and at times we felt we'd never get over it. And of course it then took forever and ever to get pregnant again, because it was too much in our minds. But eventually, in 2006, I had my second gorgeous little daughter, Ella, and this is a year later, at her christening in 2007. So then things were pretty perfect. I had an amazing little family. We had 2 lovely little girls. And then, bang, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Okay, so at 34 years old, I had an aggressive tumour in my breast, which had already migrated from the breast and gone to the lymph nodes. So it was seen as quite a serious case. And of course, it was Breast Cancer Awareness Month, so every shop had a magazine on the shelf screaming the hard fact at me that 1,000 women die of breast cancer every month. And you just have this huge fear. There's another F word that came to mind first, but you just have this fear, and you sit there and you wonder. You have 2 options. Am I somebody that survives this, or am I going to die? And with 2 little girls at the age of 1 and 5, one of those just wasn't an option. You know, I had an amazing husband, I had friends and family who I was going to grow old with, and there is no way that I was going to die. I was going to fight this with all I could. And actually, compared to what I'd been through with Holly, yeah, this was a fight I could take on. I could actually win this one. I couldn't then, but I can now. And I did also think, I'm actually pretty fortunate, because if you're going to get a cancer, breast cancer is actually quite a good one to get. They know an awful lot about it, and it did feel like I might be able to get through it. So the medics decided to hit me with every bit of medication they could. At 34, I was quite young for the disease, so they were going to give me everything. So that was a case of 6 months of chemotherapy, which were 3 weeks apart, surgery to remove the tumour in the breast and the affected lymph nodes, plus a few more, just to be sure. Recovery from surgery, and then 3 weeks of daily radiotherapy, 5 years of medicine, done, cured. That was my fight plan. That's what we were going to do. Reality was a little bit harder. Chemotherapy had its challenges in itself. It's basically a 3-week program. So you have chemotherapy on day 1. It takes about 7 days for your white blood cell count to go really down, which is when you become very, very ill. mouth ulcers, flu-like symptoms, and then there's 2 weeks where you're getting better and better and better, and after 3 weeks you're feeling really strong and great, and then they go, next chemotherapy session, you're ready for it now. So that's a continual process, but I made the decision quite early on that I wanted to try and look well throughout. And one of the things I wanted to do is try and keep hold of my hair, and that's not just a totally vain thing. It was actually that I felt that if I looked like a cancer victim, then I'd feel like a cancer victim, and that's much harder to fight than just somebody who looks normal. So when I went in, this is the Sussex Cancer Centre, when I went in for my first chemo treatment, they talked to me about the cold cap. And the cold cap basically gives you brain freeze for about 5 hours. So it elongates chemotherapy. Chemotherapy drug actually only takes about 40 minutes to go through. But I had to wear the cold cap for 2 hours before, during chemo, and then for 2 hours afterwards. I think you can see it says something like -2.5. So it's cold and uncomfortable, but it actually works. It's amazing. It stops the chemo drugs going to the hair follicles. I don't know how, but it does. So my eyelashes fell out and my eyebrows and all the hair on my body, but my hair pretty much stuck around. And that was actually, it was really important to me. It was like a tiny little fight. It was me and my hair against the drugs, and actually we got through it. So that was really good. Then there were 4 chemos in, they rescanned the tumour just to see how the chemo's going, how's the tumour reacting to it. And it was just the worst period because they rescanned it and the tumour hadn't got any smaller at all. In fact, it had got bigger. And that is just a really dark, bleak time because you think, oh gosh, I'm probably one of those people that isn't going to get through this. And this was Mother's Day, shortly after we found out, and we all went for a walk on the Downs. And I just sat there thinking, gosh, I'm not sure I'm going to be here in Mother's Day 2009. But that's not an option. You know, I can't give up then and go, right, okay, well, I'm not going to be here. You've got to fight it again. I can't leave my 2 little girls. That's all that goes through your head. You're looking after these 2 little girls. You know, I can't leave them with Daddy. Daddy can't even plait hair for school in the morning. That's not an option. Went back to the oncologist, who was completely amazing, and said, oh, we'll just switch the drugs, it's fine. So he switched the drugs. It was apparent that we'd switch drugs because the side effects were much harsher, but it did work, and the tumour did start to shrink, which was good. I have no idea what's happening next. Okay, so in the chemo sessions, which were pretty long and arduous, there were 2 things that just kept me going throughout, and that was favours and fun. My husband and I were completely overwhelmed by the support and kindness from this community and from our friends and just actually mere acquaintances. We'd come back from a chemo session at hospital and there would be not 1 but 2 or 3 dinners sitting on the back doorstep taking us through the next couple of days, and that's just lovely. People would come to the house, pick up our children, take them away, take them to school, take them to nursery, to parties. They'd include our kids on their family days out. And it was just such a lovely thing to be a part of. We had friends who did crazy charitable events for us. People did silly fun runs dressed in strange gear. There was a marathon in Paris. There was one in London. The kids here did a fun run around Hurstpierpoint village in pink bras, the girls and the boys. It was really good. And the whole time in between the chemotherapy sessions, which were 3 weeks apart, my husband and I just used to sit there and plan the fun things we'd do in between. And it really was 6 months of just having an awful lot of fun. We said yes to everything, every party, fancy dress, concert, little holiday, trip away. I just wanted to spend the whole time feeling like I was still doing my normal life and enjoying things. And actively being out there and doing things like this made everyone else see that, yes, I was fighting this and I was going to win. Chemo, ironically, always fell on things like my birthday, staff Christmas party, New Year's Eve, and we just carried on and made sure we went along to these things anyway. And we just spent the whole time trying to concentrate on putting the F into the future and leaving the C word behind us. And looking back, when I look back at those times, I don't remember it being that bad at all. I really, really don't. And I don't think my husband would agree. He hated watching me go through chemo. But it was harder for him because I was the one sitting there with the drug going in my arm, and I knew that was helping me fight it. And I knew I was fighting it and I was going to be able to win. So after a long, miserable winter of chemotherapy and then surgery, which took much longer to recover from than I'd anticipated, finally, one day in May, the sun came out, and it did feel as if we were looking to the future. And while that was happening and things felt like they were moving forward, friends and family had an impact as well. We all became so much more close. I had a really good group of girlfriends anyway, girls that I've been at school with since the age of 5. We were always very close. We stayed together, visiting each other during uni, through our 20s. But the 30s is that sort of time where everyone gets married, has babies, moves to different towns, cities, different countries, and we'd sort of started to drift apart. And so the one thing it did is bring us all close back together again. My best friend, who'd been bumming around New Zealand for 2 years with a backpack on, actually came home. And I did say, really, breast cancer? That's what it took to bring you back? You know, it's lovely, but... And my family, who all live way, way up north, actually came to Sussex to visit several times. My big brothers picked up the phone weekly, rang me and said, hi, how are you doing? And that sort of thing had never happened before. So, you know, it's a really encouraging thing when everybody comes down, and they were sort of all supporting me in this fight. And I think sometimes that's something we forget. You know, I'll quite often say, really, the M6 on a Friday night? No, let's see them at Christmas, that's fine. But you have to remember this in your life. It's important to stay by them. So we eventually did start to look to the future. And in 2012, I was given the 5-year all clear, which is a great day and a great moment. I still have annual mammograms. I had one last Friday, so I'm waiting for the results of that, which is always a slightly anxious time, but it'll be fine. I know it'll be fine. So following my diagnosis, unfortunately, both my sister and my aunt were also diagnosed with breast cancer in the few years that followed. My sister escaped chemotherapy, but had a mastectomy. She has reconstructive surgery next week, and she's a year on and healthy and happy. My aunt has been less fortunate. Over a 2-year period, her breast cancer spread from her breast into her brain, and she really sadly lost her fight with cancer last November. And that's a really tough time, because that's when not only am I grieving for her, but rather selfishly it brings everything back from my past into clear focus again. And you do ask yourself, is that my future? You know, is it fate actually? Are our family, the women in our family, predisposed to breast cancer? And then can you fight that? But you can fight it. And we sat down and we talked to doctors, and it was just a case of genetics. So let's find out if we are likely to get breast cancer. So last summer I went for the test for BRCA1, BRCA1 and BRCA2, which is the test that's made famous by Angelina Jolie. And it was another really cloudy time, because you do think, gosh, if I am carrying that, then what's the future for my daughters? And I feared for them and their lives. But as always, there is a fight plan, and if it came back as a positive result, then I was happy to have full mastectomy, hysterectomy, because research suggests that if it does come back, it'll come back either in your breast or in your ovaries. My daughters would have very early testing for breast cancer from the age of 20 and for the rest of their lives. So that was what we were ready for, and actually the result came back and it was negative. So it was real happy times in our family again. I do know, however, that that isn't going to be the last hurdle in my life, but I know from the experiences I've had that I have got the strength to fight anything that is ahead of me now. And I think that is the real clear message I want to give you today, and I want you to take away. There are always other possibilities to what is presented to you, but you have absolutely got to focus on the positive, and you have to be prepared to fight. And looking around this room today, really sadly, one or more than one of you are going to go through something similar to what I went to. And if it's not you, it will be your friend, and they need you to stand by you and support you in your fight. So I think if it does happen to you, yes, of course, fear will present itself, absolutely. And fate may have a part in it, I don't know. Your friends and your family, of course, will be there to support you, but you and only you can take on that fight. And you just grit your teeth, and with complete determination, you make sure you make that fight. And I'm telling you, you will win. Thank you.